think it's important, Millie. I started my radio career at Triple R in Melbourne, actually, and seeing Billy Bragg up here on the stage earlier today reminded me that the first time I heard a Billy Bragg record was while I was working there in the early 80s. His very first vinyl album arrived in at the station, and I can say that about so many artists that came through commercial radio. But Michael, there's still no substitute, is there, for being played on commercial radio? Have you made representations to the government? You're an industry veteran, people know your name. Have you knocked on doors and said, look, you ought to do
40
something?
40 years we've been knocking on the meatheads' doors. Hopefully the new government won't throw away the advances that Sounds Australia and other organisations have made in the last 3 or 4 years. We work, from our point of view, we work community radio nationally. We don't care where it is. It could be in Dungog playing to 1,200 people. Those 1,200 people are listening to those stations because they're hearing music they want to hear. We work those stations as hard as we work the major stations. Our distributor MGM has developed a program that can tell us exactly within a kilometre where all our records are selling. So all of a sudden you've got this graph of 110 or 150,000 sales, and you can see where they are. So you can actually then start to plan tours, and you can go to the community radio stations and you can give them shows to get involved in. And you know, a lot of the community radio stations we do that with are so thankful and amazed that we bother. And I think it's very important. I also think over the next 5 years, you know, with the way Australians are embracing phone technology, etc., that digital radio is going to make a big noise in this country, and it will continue to grow as the new range of cars all have digital radio. And I think you'll find that digital radio will become a very, very powerful weapon for the Australian music industry if I've got anything to do with it, that's for sure. And digital platforms generally, actually. I was talking to you, Andy, in the foyer before we came on, and it was interesting, actually, because one of the things I mentioned was how I saw the brand new UMI vinyl releases at my local record shop, and they do look rather magnificent. But you were actually confessing to me that you listen to most of your music on a digital device these days, purely and simply because, as we know, it's portable and it's convenient and you can get what you want when you want it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you know, the streaming services are really, you know, I don't know the exact figures, but, you know, anecdotal evidence will tell you, and I've got friends and, you know, big American bands who just say, look, it's a pile of shit what you get paid. But, you know, it is on your phone, and I confess I do use it. But, you know, I think that, as Michael says, there'll be a point in the near future where, you know, you can listen to that radio station on your phone, and you may be able to, you know, go back a day or listen to a particular radio program or whatever that you like, and you can tap in through radio to a similar kind of experience, which I would probably rather do, because I think it's, I don't know, I mean, streaming is convenient. It's through your car, Bluetooth on your phone. I mean, I do put records on at home, but yeah, it's convenient. But yeah, I mean, if digital radio comes through and gives a similar experience, I will move straight across, and I think a lot of other people will. And I agree with Michael. I think, you know, technology over the last 20 years has taken, you know, the gatekeepers out of the equation in a lot of senses, and I think commercial radio, or radio in general, is going to find that in the near future people are going to just go to what they want and not be told, okay, this is what you're listening to, people. We've got a, you know, we've got advertisers and we have a listenership, and this is what you're getting. You will be able to bypass that.
I think you'll find that on digital radio, the songs will be far more than the ads that are played these days. And I think that'll be a big plus too.
Yeah, I think digital radio, when it finally breaks in Australia, I remember going to radio school about 10 years ago and learning about digital was the next frontier, and I'm still waiting for it to really launch properly. There's a few radio schools. But I think it'll be huge when it finally comes, because it will break down a lot of barriers. But for me, really, the future is mobile. You can have digital radio coming through your mobile, you can have streaming services coming through your mobile. Music consumers aren't going to really care if it's a radio station, if it's Spotify, if it's SoundCloud. They just want to be able to have it there. wherever they are and have that ease of utilizing it and interacting with it. So it'll be interesting. I think it'll break down in this concept of radio and streaming services will just mesh into one way to ingest music.
But it will also mean, for you guys, I have no idea what your plans are, but I imagine that it's not just one station that you're listening to. You can then break yours down into, this particular show might go for, however long, or this,
Oh, definitely, yeah.
there are programs that you can tap into rather than just listen to the one feed. I mean, I've got no idea, but it will make the Triple J experience much broader.
Yeah, it'll be a lot more, you'll be able to hone in on what you want to listen to, and it'll be a lot more customizable, and that's great, because if it's going to encourage more people to interact with music, that's where it really has to be.
So the mobile is the iPod of today, the pocket device, but it's different to the iPod because you can connect in real time to anything that you want, and you can fashion and shape your content on the run, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And that also kind of brings up full circle back to the discussion about the song. I mean, I think one of the things that creatively probably has to change in the near immediate future, and I think we're already seeing it with the amount of EPs that are being released, is kind of letting go of not so much letting go of the concept of the album, but focusing far more strongly on the song. And
because you don't think a lot of young artists are focused enough on just getting that killer song, do you?
No, and I also think that the record companies do them a disservice in the way that they pick singles now. I mean, it's ridiculous just not go out there with the best song you've ever written, straight out, instead of this strategy of here's the pre-single and here's the radio single for Triple J and here's another single for commercial station. It's just stupid. Go out there with the best song.
But that
to
might
everybody.
be also part of the landscape where the majors aren't there in the same way. I think that
Correct.
role of A&R and really working on the song isn't probably done as much, and you've got access and artists can get to the technology to produce the record and make the record and record the record, but there's possibly not enough acts taking that step back and having someone objectively really work with them in what an A&R, true A&R sense capacity was about building that right song.
Yeah, and I think that's an area, along with the young managers that you mentioned before, Millie, that really has to be focused on is those, great sets of ears that go, that's a hit single, release it. Just get it out there as quickly and as widely as you can. I just think, this whole thing of it's all about the album. I mean, particularly in sales now, it's an outmoded concept. I mean, the album started as a marketing tool by record labels to compile singles. So I just think if creatively everybody started focusing on that great song, also that opens doors at commercial radio. How can you deny when it is a great song?
No, I'm a bit reluctant to let go of the idea of the album, I must say. And,
Well, on your mobile devices, they're not playing albums.
a band like Tame
They're playing
Impala's
playlists.
recent album, for example, I suppose is the exception to that rule, a perfectly realised entire album with some great songs on it as well.
But it's the benefit of a record is there is a beginning and a middle and an end, and it's thought through. I do agree with Kathy that if you want to move forward, you got to engage with people, and you should keep the focus, your message on your best thing. But I do love the record too. I agree.
Sort of the format that's happening with a lot of Australian acts is they're releasing 1 or 2 EPs. Some are even releasing 3 before they go to the album. And I think that's a good thing, and that's certainly the model that we've been running with, and certainly the model that Sebastian Chase at MGM has put to a lot of the young bands that work through him. It's all about the songs, it really is. And if you've got the songs, you're going to break through sooner or later. And it's always been about the songs, but probably more so today than ever before.
Yeah, I don't think there's, I agree that I don't think there's really much of a shape of how you need to do it, whether it be an EP followed by an album or whatever. It's just got to be what's reflecting you as an artist. If you've got the singles and it's going to work as an EP, great. If you're going to construct an incredible, flawless album, construct the album, people will still pick the bits out of that they want as a single, and those who still want to consume an album will enjoy that. So the most important thing is not to feel pressured to follow any sort of conception and go, great, I'll do this, and I'll do this, and now I can do an album. If you're a band that's never going to be like that, then just hone in on your strengths.
The other good way of picking the singles these days is that all the tracks are available as an EP or an album or individually on iTunes. And the punters who are buying the product very quickly show you which is their favourite song, and that can direct you towards which should be the single.
Yeah, I often find that a lot of the artists, what they think is the single, they're way off the mark. So give the EP to or whatever the track's to all your mates and see what they come back with, because a lot of the time it's not the one that you've connected with, and you've connected with it for a reason because you're the artistic person and it means something to you, but everyone else may see it completely differently.
Andy, Billy Bragg gave the keynote address here at Big Sound today, and I know he's spoken in the past about how he, these days, is a self-funded, home-managed, independent artist. He sort of removed himself from being reliant on the labels and so forth. I suppose he's an example of how musicians these days can thrive by being able to do it themselves. To what extent can you successfully do it yourself, and to what extent are you still dependent upon that infrastructure that the industry, although it's changed, still provides?
Well, I think every case is different. Every song is different, every band is different, and it's what fits that band. If a band has great songs but doesn't have a fan base, doesn't really connect, and doesn't really use those tools well, then they probably need some help. A label, a band like You Or I has been around a long time, has a fan base, and it's about giving those people really what they need and trying to always exceed their expectation each time. Whether it's vinyl, as you talk about, whether it's a show, whatever. And we can do that with different platforms that we use and just connect. And we don't, a label's not going to clamour for a You Or My record, but the fans will clamour for You Or My stuff. And that's what we just give them. But every case is different. Some bands are incredible at just connecting through social media and sending out song after song at the right time and just having this momentum that people just engage with, and some aren't. So, there's enough out there for people to use, software or platforms or whatever, that they can pick and choose. And if it's right for a label to be involved or a publisher to throw some money at, and that's the case. But one point I will make is that I think the job of a manager is different these days. I think it's about understanding all of those elements and how to put them together and how to engage with parts of the industry when you need to and not engage when you don't. I think the role is much bigger. And, it moves across A&R, it moves across basic touring and accounting, all these deals that you would normally do. But really it's about, a management is about perception of an act and how that is presented. But it's how it fits in these days with all these different tools that you can use, yourself.
Millie, there's a lot of young band managers these days, more than ever before, and they're, in a sense, helping to reshape and change the industry as well. And there are initiatives like, for example, the John Butler Seed Management Project, where young managers are given some support to get into the business. And there are similar initiatives to that as well. Tell us a bit about what these support funds do, and also what difference these young managers are making to the music scene.
I think it is those programs, and I think we're at a stage where some of them have been going for enough time now where you're actually seeing the benefits out the other end. So if you start at the level of the JB Seed and that incredible opportunity for the artist managers and the self-managed artists that have come through, out of that, Jen Clow has created I Manage My Music, which is, again, for self-managed artists at this level. AMIN and the AAM have been working with the Office for the Arts for an initiative called Control, which is a really high-end, intense program where the managers coming out of that, most of them are in tears every second day because it's absolutely making them critically decide, is this where they should be and what should they be doing? But I think the combination of all of those programs are just making people cleverer and more sophisticated and more able to ask questions. And I think at every level now around the country there are access points, whether it's through the state associations and the open days and workshops, and they're all running programs at this level to start out at grassroots. But I think we've now got the tiers in place, and I think now what you're starting to see is that information that's been absolutely channeled to them, and it's those managers that have come through those tiers that are absolutely killing it overseas, and they're not afraid to work with each other, as I mentioned earlier,